Do you know who's the only one responsible for changing your life? It's not your boss, it's not your partner, it's not time. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It's not coming. Every minute you delay is a chance that slips away. The truth is hard, but it's freeing. No one's coming to save you. Your future depends on what you do today, not tomorrow. So, are you going to keep putting your growth on hold, or are you going to take control now? This video is a direct invitation to do what most people avoid. Focus on yourself and work harder on your personal growth. Because as long as you keep getting distracted by what's going on outside, you'll keep drifting away from the life you truly deserve. Today, you'll learn how to apply Stoic principles to take back control of your mind, strengthen your discipline, and stay committed to your path, even when no one's clapping for you. There are no excuses here, only choices. We're going to talk about focus, consistency, and responsibility, the three pillars that separate those who dream from those who take action. If you're tired of settling, if you feel like you were made for something greater, stay with me. This video is for you, for the you who's ready to stop running and start growing. When you stop focusing on yourself, everything starts to feel heavier. The noise, the doubts, the mess. Has it ever happened to you? Sometimes you don't even know why you feel stuck. You just know something's not right. If this video stirred something inside you, subscribe and become an exclusive member to start building yourself for real. And tell me in the comments, what part of you have you been putting on the back burner? Write it with strength, with intention. Today I start with me. Get ready, because what's coming might change the way you see yourself. Ready? Let's go all in. Teaching number 1. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. If Marcus Aurelius were alive today, he wouldn't be staring at the loading screen of his life, waiting for it to hit 100%. He'd be acting with what he's got, today. But you, me, all of us have this terrible habit of waiting. We wait until Monday to start the habit. We wait for next month to sign up for the gym. We wait to have more money, more time, more clarity. And in the meantime, life slips away like water through your fingers. You know what's really going on? The perfect moment doesn't exist. It's an illusion you made up to protect yourself from the fear of failing. And every day you feed that illusion, you take one step further from the version of yourself you could become. Picture Marcus Aurelius with 1,000 tabs open in his head. A war to manage, an empire in crisis, illness, political betrayal. He had every excuse in the world to say, "Not today, I'll think about it tomorrow." But no, he wrote down his reflections every night. Not because he had the perfect moment, but because he understood something you're still learning. Life doesn't happen in ideal moments. It happens in real ones. And real moments are full of doubt, exhaustion, noise. The Stoics didn't wait to feel ready. They acted precisely when it was uncomfortable, because they knew that's where real growth happens. So think about it, my friend. How many times have you said, "When I have time, when I'm more organized, when this phase passes"? Seneca would have smiled with a bit of sadness if he'd heard you, because that's just another fancy excuse not to start. Seneca spent much of his work breaking down that illusion, that there will be time later. The truth is, you don't know. You don't know how many days you've got left. You don't know how many more chances you'll get. The only thing you do have is today, this moment, with all its flaws. And if you don't start today, tomorrow will just be another today with the same renewed list of excuses. Let's be honest, you're not lacking information. You've got more courses than a master's degree, more downloaded books than time to read them, more saved videos than days in a year. Your problem isn't that you don't know what to do. Your problem is that you're waiting for a sign that's never going to come. You're waiting for the stars to align, for your mind to be clear, for your life to be in order. But life is never in order. Life is controlled chaos, at best. And those who move forward, those who truly transform their reality through consistent action and personal responsibility, they don't wait for things to be perfect. They start with what they've got. They start badly, scared, unsure of whether it'll work. but they start. Let me show you something. Imagine two people, Ana and Carlos. They're both in their early 30s. They both want to switch careers. Ana signs up for course after course, reads everything she can, asks for advice, makes detailed plans. She says that once she's 100% ready, she'll make the leap. Carlos, on the other hand, signs up for a basic course, finishes half of it, and starts looking for small projects to get experience. He makes mistakes at first, gets things wrong, but he keeps going. 5 years later, Ana's still getting ready, still waiting for the perfect moment. Carlos has been working in what he loves for 3 years now, gaining real experience, growing. See the difference? It's not about talent. It's not about information. It's about decision. Epictetus would say Ana doesn't have a problem with lack of opportunity. She has a problem with lack of action. She's stuck in permanent preparation, which is just another form of procrastination dressed up as wisdom. Endless waiting is fear. You know it, don't you? Behind every "not yet," there's a fear hiding. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of being seen failing. Fear of finding out you're not as great as you thought. And that's okay. We all feel that fear. But here's the difference between people who build their lives with discipline and action, and those who just dream about it. The first group acts with fear. They don't wait for it to disappear. Marcus Aurelius made decisions in the middle of war. With no perfect data, no time to overthink, he decided and owned the consequences. Because he understood something brutal but freeing. It's better to be wrong while taking action than to be right while just imagining. Think of your life like a traffic light that never fully turns green. It's always on amber. There's always a but, always something missing. The Stoics didn't stand still on amber. They crossed the street with fear and all, because they knew that standing still is also a decision, and it's the worst one of all. It's the decision to let life run over you while you wait for permission from a moment that never comes. How many more years are you going to wait? How many versions of yourself are you going to let die while trying to be perfect before starting? Listen closely. You don't need to change your entire life today. You just need to change your tomorrow. Pick one thing, whatever it is. That thing you've been putting off for months or even years. You don't need a perfect plan. Give yourself a limit. 1 week to gather information max, and then 1 month of action. The Stoics planned, yes, but they weren't trapped in the plan. They understood that imperfect action is worth infinitely more than perfect planning. Start even if it's just 10 minutes a day. Start even if it doesn't go well. Start even if you're scared. Because every day you start, even badly, is a day you move forward. And every day you wait is a day you gift to your future regret. Here's something that might make you uncomfortable. 5 years from now, you'll be somewhere. The question is where. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment, you'll be in the same place with the same doubts, the same "when I can." Maybe with more courses under your belt, more information stacked up, but not a single real step taken. Do you really want that? Do you really think your problem is lack of preparation? No, your problem is that you've turned preparation into your comfort zone. You've gotten used to feeling productive by researching, but never producing. And that, hard as it is to admit, isn't growth. It's a sophisticated way of standing still. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that should be tattooed on the mind of anyone who's still waiting. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. He didn't write that to depress you. He wrote it to wake you up. If today were your last day, would you still be fine-tuning your plan? Or would you start, even if the plan wasn't perfect? The answer's obvious. But we live as if we're immortal, like there's always a tomorrow to finally begin. And that illusion is what's keeping you stuck in mediocrity. So I'm going to ask you to do something. Tell someone today what you're going to start. Not to get validation, but to back yourself into a corner a little. Say it out loud. Write it down. Commit to it in a visible way. Because when you make it public, even to one person, it carries real weight. It stops being a vague intention and becomes a decision. And that's power. That's personal responsibility in its purest form. If you want to live like a modern Stoic, stop waiting to be the perfect version of yourself and start acting like the apprentice who's tired of postponing their own life. Because the perfect moment is an illusion. The only thing you've really got is this exact day, with its flaws, its noise, its imperfection. And it's in that imperfect day that everything is built. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Today. Second teaching, discipline beats procrastination. How many times have you said, just 5 more minutes, and lost an entire hour? We've all played that game. We've all bargained with ourselves like we're two different people. One that knows what needs to be done, and another that's looking for any excuse not to do it. And right there, in that constant negotiation, your life slips away. Because procrastination isn't just about wasting time. It's about losing respect for yourself. It's becoming someone who doesn't keep their own word. And that, even if you don't notice it right away, slowly destroys you from the inside out. The Stoics weren't robots. They felt lazy too. There were days when they didn't want to do anything. But they didn't negotiate with laziness the way you and I do. They didn't give it decision-making power. They understood something we find hard to accept. Wanting isn't enough. You have to act even when you don't feel like it. That's discipline. It's not waiting for motivation to show up. It's moving precisely when motivation is gone. Maybe this has happened to you. You sit down to work. You open your laptop. You know exactly what you need to do. But right before starting, you check your email, just for a second. Then you open social media, just a quick glance, then a recommended video, and suddenly, an hour later, you still haven't done the thing that actually matters. Seneca would say your time wasn't stolen. You gave it away because you lacked discipline, because you didn't set a boundary, didn't say no to distractions, didn't protect your mental energy like something sacred. And there's a price for that, one you pay every day, the constant feeling that you're not moving forward, that you're in debt to yourself. Procrastination isn't pure laziness. It's not that you're lazy by nature. It's fear, my friend. Fear of facing the task and realizing you're not as good as you thought. Fear of sustained effort. Fear of discomfort. So you look for quick relief. Endless scrolling, notifications, anything that pulls you away from that uncomfortable feeling. But that relief is fake, because after the distraction comes the guilt. You know you should have been doing something else. And that guilt piles up, day after day, until you start feeling small, inconsistent, angry at yourself. Sound familiar? Here's the good news. Discipline can be trained. You weren't born undisciplined. You've just never trained it enough. And to train it, you don't need to suddenly become some self-discipline machine. Do it the Stoic way. Small, repeated, consistent. The Stoics weren't looking for overnight epic transformations. They aimed for consistency, because they knew that the person who does 10 minutes a day for a year ends up doing more than the one who promises 2 hours, but never starts. The key to sustaining personal growth isn't in grand promises. It's in the small actions you repeat, even when no one's watching. Think of your mind like a water tank. Every time you procrastinate, you poke a tiny hole in it. Energy leaks out, discipline weakens. Marcus Aurelius spent his life protecting that tank. He didn't let every negative thought, every distraction, every impulse drain his mind. He chose what to think about, what to focus on, what to let go. Because he understood that mental discipline is the foundation of external discipline. If you can't control your mind, you won't control your actions. It's that simple and that brutal. Now let me tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Look at your to-do list for today. How many of those tasks have been carried over for weeks? How many did you push to today because yesterday wasn't the right time? Every task you drag forward is a small defeat. Not because the task itself is important, but because every time you don't follow through, you lose trust in yourself. You become someone who can't believe their own word. And that destroys your self-esteem faster than any external failure. Because external failure you can justify, But chronic inaction, constant procrastination, that has no excuse. That's just you versus you. Now contrast that with Marcus Aurelius. Picture him, exhausted after a day of running the empire, sick, in pain, dealing with impossible political problems, and still, at night, writing his reflections. Not as a performance, not for anyone to see. He did it as an act of internal discipline, to bring order to his mind before sleep, to make sure the chaos of the day didn't steal his center. That's self-respect. That's personal responsibility taken to the end. Not waiting to feel like it. Not waiting for inspiration. Doing what needs to be done because it's aligned with the person you want to become. And here's the big difference between discipline and punishment. For a Stoic, discipline is not torture or self-hate. It's the highest form of self-respect. It's telling yourself, I matter enough to follow through. I matter enough not to betray myself with cheap distractions. Because every time you choose discipline over procrastination, you're choosing yourself. You're telling yourself you're worth more than endless scrolling, more than one more episode, more than 5 extra minutes in bed. And that, even if it stings at first, becomes peace. Because you know you did what needed to be done. And no distraction can give you that kind of peace. The Stoics embraced something we now call the dichotomy of control. You don't control the outcome. You don't control whether you'll succeed. You don't control whether others will value your effort. But you do control one thing. Whether you sit down today and do the work, even if it's just for 20 minutes, that's in your hands. And when you anchor your discipline in what you can control, you stop looking for excuses. Because you don't need the stars to align. You just need to decide that today, no matter what, you're going to show up for yourself. How can you focus and work harder on your personal growth? Decide that no matter what, you'll give 10 minutes a day to that one task you've been avoiding. 10 minutes, no phone, no tabs open, no distractions. Just you and the task. And if after those 10 minutes you don't feel like continuing, that's fine. But you'll have broken the inertia. You'll have shown discipline. And that's worth more than an entire day of I'll start tomorrow. Because applied discipline, even in microdoses, gives you back control. It gives you back confidence. It reminds you that you're building something real. And one more thing. When you catch yourself putting something off, ask yourself, what part of this task can I do in 2 minutes? Open the document, write one sentence, pick up a part of the room, reply to one email, whatever it is. Because procrastination feeds off that initial paralysis. But once you start, even with something ridiculously small, resistance drops. And that's when discipline kicks in. Because now you don't have to fight to start, you just have to keep going. Epictetus lived with very little. Not as a spiritual pose, but because he knew that every extra thing complicates the mind. Every available distraction is one more temptation to fight. So do yourself a small Stoic favor. Design your environment to make discipline easier. Leave your phone in another room when you work. Close tabs you don't need. Create a space where it's harder to get distracted than to keep going. Because discipline isn't just about willpower. It's also about practical intelligence. About setting things up in your favor. Next time you're about to say, I'll do it later, ask yourself this. Am I acting like the version of me I want to become? Or like the one I've been trying to leave behind for years? That answer, even if it stings, is your first real act of discipline. Because discipline doesn't start with action. It starts with honesty. With looking in the mirror and realizing the only person holding you back is you. And that you're also the only one who can push yourself forward. So now, take a moment and really observe yourself. Not from guilt, from honesty. What's the task, habit, or decision you've been avoiding? The one you know would change your life if you gave it your attention today. Tell me in the comments. We're all on the same path here, and your answer might help someone else feel a little less alone in what they're going through. And if you don't know what to write, just keep it simple and clear. Today I choose to show up for myself. Third teaching, define where you're going. Do you actually know where you're headed, or are you just waking up every day putting out fires? Think about it. You woke up today, checked your phone, went to work, came back, dinner, couch. But tell me something. At what point in the day were you actually moving toward your direction? Because there's a huge difference between being busy and being focused. And most people live extremely busy, but completely lost. You work 8 hours, run errands, help others, reply to messages, and still by the end of the day, you feel like you haven't moved an inch. You know why? Because you're living without direction, and a life without direction never feels light, no matter how much you move. Seneca had a phrase that should be engraved on the forehead of anyone who feels stuck. If a man does not know to what port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. He didn't say it to sound elegant in a book. He said it because he himself had lived without direction before finding his philosophical purpose. He'd been a counselor, a politician, wealthy, influential. But until he knew what kind of life he truly wanted to live, all that power meant nothing. It was just noise. And you, even if you're not an emperor's advisor, are in the exact same place. You have options, you have possibilities. But without a clear direction, all those options drain you instead of pushing you forward. Maybe you know someone who works constantly, or maybe that someone is you, always doing 1,000 things a day, responding to everything, helping everyone, never stopping. But when you ask them what they're actually building, what they're really aiming for, they go quiet. Not because they're not smart, but because they're living busy, not focused. Epictetus would say that person doesn't live poorly, they live aimlessly. And that's not a problem of effort, it's a problem of clarity. Because you can row with all your strength, but if you don't know where you're going, all you do is wear yourself out. You don't move forward. And here's the brutal truth, my friend. If you don't define your direction, the world will define it for you. Other people's urgencies will become your priorities. Other people's expectations will become your life. And 10 years from now, you'll wake up asking yourself how you ended up there. Because every day you live without clear purpose is a day you give away, not to rest, not to enjoyment. You give it to disorder. And mental disorder is heavy, heavier than any physical labor. Because you don't know if you're actually making progress or just going in circles. To the Stoics, clarity of purpose wasn't a luxury, it was sacred. They called it telos, your direction, your North Star, the reason it's worth getting up in the morning. And we're not talking about some grand, unreachable goal. You don't need your entire life figured out. You just need to know where you're heading this week, this month, this year. Because once you know that, everything else starts falling into place. Decisions become easier. You know what to say yes to and what to say no to. And believe me, knowing how to say no is one of the most underrated superpowers in growth through action. Try this experiment right now. Think about the last 7 days. How many of them were lived with purpose? And how many were lived on autopilot? How many days did you do things that got you closer to where you want to be? And how many were just reacting to whatever showed up? Epictetus would ask his students this question regularly, because he understood something we tend to forget. Life isn't measured in years. It's measured in intention. You can live 80 years and not really live a single one. Or you can live 40 and build a meaningful life, because each day you knew where you were heading. The GPS of your life has been saying recalculating for years, and you're still waiting for someone else to tell you the destination. But no one's going to do it. The Stoics had their destination clear, even if they didn't know the exact path. That's the difference. You don't need to know the whole map, you just need to know the port. You need to know whether you're headed north or south. Because once you do, the steps start to make sense. The hard decisions become obvious, and that constant weight of, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, begins to disappear. Let me be honest with you. Defining your direction is scary, because once you do it, you're committed. You can't hide behind, I'm still exploring. You can't justify every distraction with, this might help. When you define your direction, everything that doesn't align becomes visible. And that's uncomfortable. Because you see how many things you're doing that aren't taking you anywhere. How many relationships are draining you. How many activities are stealing your time without giving you anything back. But that discomfort is the price of clarity, and it's a price worth paying. Seneca said something else too. He said most people don't live, they just exist. Because living means having a purpose that guides every decision, and existing is just being pulled along by whatever shows up. So, which one are you doing right now? Because if you feel heavy, stuck, confused, the reason probably isn't that you're doing too little. It's that you're doing too much without direction, and that's more exhausting than any focused effort. Now, this doesn't mean your purpose has to be something grand. You don't need to change the world. You don't need to be the best at anything. But you do need to know what you're building. It can be as simple as, this year, I want to strengthen my discipline and my health. Or, I want to build a small business that gives me freedom. Or, I want to be someone my family can count on without hesitation. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is that you choose, that you define it, that you write it down, that you make it your compass. And once you do that, life changes. Not because everything gets easier, but because everything makes more sense. You know why you're waking up early. You know why you're saying no to certain invitations. You know why you're investing your time in some things and not others. And that feeling of internal alignment is what the Stoics called living according to nature. Living aligned, not scattered, not distracted, whole. Here's something practical you can do tonight. Take 10 minutes and write down what you did today that moved you closer to your direction. You don't have to have the perfect direction yet. Just write down where you think you want to go. Then review your day. How many actions lined up with that direction? How many were just noise? Do this each night for a week. Don't judge. Just observe. Because that observation will give you more clarity than any Find Your Purpose course ever will. And one more thing. Define one small purpose for each week, not a huge one for your entire life. Start simple. This week, my purpose is to move every day. Or, this week, I want to work one focused hour a day with no distractions. Small, measurable, real. Because when you define small purposes and follow through on them, you start trusting yourself. And that trust is the fuel you need to take on bigger ones. The Stoics knew that without direction, the mind falls into disorder and life becomes heavy. You can have all the talent in the world, all the energy, all the opportunities, but if you don't know where you're taking them, they get wasted. And wasted potential doesn't just hurt in the moment. It hurts years down the line when you look back and realize you could have built something real. If today you define where you're going, even if it's imperfectly, tomorrow you'll walk lighter. Because every step will have meaning. And when every step has meaning, life stops feeling like a burden. It becomes what it was always meant to be. A conscious construction of the person you want to become. Fourth teaching, action matters more than knowledge picture. Epictetus sitting next to you while you're watching self-development videos. He wouldn't say a word. He'd just look at you and ask, "And what have you done with all this?" Because that's the real problem we all face. We know too much and we do too little. You start a course, leave it halfway through. You save a video to your favorites, never watch it. You take beautiful notes, highlight everything perfectly, and then do nothing with it. And you feel productive because you're learning. But Epictetus would tell you the truth. You're not learning, you're collecting information. And collecting information without applying it is just another form of procrastination. We've all got that mental storage closet full of new tools, but not a single thing built. You've got 20 books on habits, but no solid habit. You know how to train, but you don't train. You know how to eat better, but you don't do it. You know how to get organized, but you're still living in chaos. And yet, you keep looking for more information. Another course, another book, another video that will finally give you that missing piece. But the missing piece isn't more knowledge. It's action. It's always been action. Because knowledge only deserves that name when it's applied. Everything else is just noise dressed up as growth. Seneca said it 1,000 times. To know without doing is not to know at all. And he said it so clearly because he'd fallen into that trap himself. He'd studied philosophy for years, read everything, knew everything, but nothing changed until he started living what he knew. Because theory is the map, but action is the walk, and you can have the best map in the world, but if you don't take a single step, you're still in the same place, staring at the paper, studying the route, but never moving. And here's what hurts the most, my friend. The heaviest burden isn't what you don't know. It's what you do know and don't apply. Because every time you don't put something into practice that you know would help you, you're proving to yourself that you don't trust you. Every time you learn something and don't act on it, you're telling yourself that knowledge is more valuable than your own growth. That theory matters more than your transformation. And even if you don't see it right away, that slowly eats away at your self-esteem. Because deep down, you know you could be doing better. You know you have the tools, but you're not using them. And that turns you into a spectator in your own life. Let me ask you something directly. How many videos like this one have you already watched? How many books have you read on productivity, discipline, stoicism? And how many of those things have you actually applied? This isn't a guilt trip. It's to give you back your power. Because the answer reveals something important. The problem isn't that you don't know what to do. The problem is that you're not doing what you already know. And as long as you keep looking for answers outside yourself, you'll keep avoiding the only answer that matters. Act with what you have. The Stoics weren't academic intellectuals. They were practitioners. Epictetus taught that philosophy wasn't for debating in lecture halls. It was for living better, for making better decisions, for staying strong when everything falls apart. And that doesn't come from reading. It comes from doing. Seneca wrote letters filled with practical exercises, not empty speeches. He'd say, "Do this today, reflect on this tonight, apply this principle tomorrow." Because he knew that without action, all the knowledge in the world is worthless. And this applies to everything. Think about a chef. They can watch 1,000 cooking videos, read 1,000 recipes, study every technique. But if they never cook, they'll never be a chef. The knowledge is there, yes, but the skill, the experience, the real growth, that only comes when you get your hands dirty, when you mess up, when you burn something, when you try again. Same with your life. You can study how to be disciplined, but until you sit down and work, even when you don't feel like it, you're not disciplined. You can read about courage, but until you do the thing that scares you, you're not brave. Action is what transforms knowledge into character, and character is all that matters when life gets hard. Let's be clear. Action doesn't guarantee perfect results. You're going to mess up. You're going to get things wrong. You're going to try and fail. But that doesn't matter, because action gives you something far more valuable: growth. Every time you act, you learn something no book could ever teach you. You learn how you respond under pressure. You learn what works for you. You learn to trust yourself, because you prove to yourself that you can. And that growth, even if small, is the only thing that actually gets you closer to building a life based on responsibility and discipline. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They weren't aiming for perfection. They were aiming to move forward, a little more every day. Seneca said the wise person isn't the one who knows everything. It's the one who applies what they know. And that's a massive difference. Because the world is full of people who know, but it's empty of people who do. Full of dreamers who plan, but empty of builders who execute. So the question is, which side do you want to be on? The side of the talkers, or the side of the doers? My friend, it's time to act. Turn every idea you learn into a real action. Today, even if it's small. You watched a video on discipline? Make it real. Tomorrow, wake up 10 minutes earlier. You read about healthy eating? Apply it. Eat one meal today with 0 distractions. You learned about Stoicism? Practice it. Tonight, reflect on what things you controlled today and what things you didn't. Don't wait for perfect clarity to move. Act, and the clarity will come after. It always does. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. and build your own system. For every piece of content you consume, execute one thing, one video, one action, one book, one change, one idea, one experiment. Because if you don't set that boundary, you'll keep stacking information without transformation. And information without transformation is just weight. It's mental clutter. It's the illusion of growth when in reality, you're standing still. You're like an eternal student who never graduates, who never steps into the real world to test what they know. And the danger of being an eternal student is that you protect yourself from failure, yes, but you also protect yourself from success. Because success, real growth, true transformation, those only come when you step out of theory and into practice. When you stop being a spectator and become the protagonist. When you stop learning about life and start living it. Epictetus didn't want brilliant students. He wanted learners in motion. People who took an idea and acted on it immediately. People who lived the philosophy, not just talked about it. Because he knew something we often forget. Stoic philosophy isn't meant to impress anyone. It's meant to keep you from falling apart when life hits hard. And that only comes through daily practice, constant action, and real choices in real moments. Don't be an eternal student. Be a learner in motion. Because movement, even if it's imperfect, always takes you further than perfection that never begins. Fifth teaching, comfort holds back your growth. When your alarm goes off, your bed turns into the best philosopher in the world, convincing you that everything can wait. 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes. After all, what's one day? And you're right, one day is nothing. But 100 days, 1,000, that's everything, and just like that, without even realizing it, comfort becomes your way of life, not as a conscious choice, but as a silent surrender. Marcus Aurelius also had a warm bed. He also had tough days, physical pain, long nights. And still, every morning he wrote, "Get up." You were not born to lie under the blankets. He didn't write it to sound heroic. He wrote it because he understood something you're still learning. Comfort doesn't give you rest, it gives you fragility. Think about it. When was the last time you did something that truly made you uncomfortable? I'm not talking about heroic acts. Not climbing a mountain or facing your deepest fear. I'm talking about simple things. Getting up at the first alarm, training in the cold, saying that uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding for weeks, making that hard call, starting that project you've been putting off. Small discomforts that deep down you know would make you better. But you don't do them, because comfort always has a better argument. It always has a reason why you can wait. And while you wait, you become weaker. Not because you're bad, but because the muscle that isn't used weakens. Epictetus used to say this to his students. And he wasn't just talking about the body. He was talking about character, willpower, and the ability to do hard things, which is what defines you as a person. Imagine your life is like a room with the heater running all day. At first it feels good. You feel warm, protected. But then it starts to dull you. You become sensitive to even the slightest temperature change. And eventually, even stepping out onto the balcony feels like too much. Because you've gotten used to this artificial climate where nothing challenges you. The Stoics opened windows. They didn't want to live in an emotionally climate-controlled world. They wanted to be ready for the cold, for the heat, for the unexpected. Because life doesn't come with a thermostat. And if you only know how to function in comfort, the first hit of reality will break you. Seneca lived a life full of luxury, wealth, power, influence. He could have stayed there, enjoying every comfort the Roman Empire had to offer. But he didn't. He practiced voluntary fasting. He sometimes slept on the floor. He wore simple clothes, not because he hated pleasure, but because he understood that if his well-being depended on comfort, then he wasn't free. He was a slave to his circumstances. And what he was after, what all Stoics were after, was internal strength. That ability to be okay even when nothing around you is. Because life will put you in uncomfortable situations. It won't ask. It won't wait until you're ready. And if you only know how to function when everything's easy, you'll fall apart. Now think about your past week. How many times did you choose what was easy over what was necessary, stayed home instead of moving your body, ate what was fast instead of what was healthy, watched another episode instead of working on your project, delayed a hard conversation? Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're choosing weakness. Not out of malice, not because you're lazy, but because comfort is addictive. And like any addiction, it numbs you at first, but empties you over time. It takes away your ability to respond to life with strength. It turns you into someone reactive instead of proactive, someone who waits for things to get easier instead of getting stronger for the hard. And here's the brutal part. Imagine you go an entire month doing only what's comfortable. Nothing hard, nothing challenging. Just what you feel like when you feel like it, how you feel like it. Who are you drifting away from, your best self or your worst? The answer's obvious. Because your best self doesn't live in comfort. It lives where you challenge yourself, where you do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it, where you keep your word even when it's hard. That version of you doesn't appear by magic. It shows up when you train discomfort like a muscle, small daily doses, little by little, until what once felt hard doesn't scare you so much anymore. The Stoics knew that the soul needs friction to shine. It needs resistance, it needs challenge. Not out of masochism, but because that's what makes it strong. Epictetus lived with a damaged leg, constant pain, and still, he taught every single day. Not because he didn't care about his body, but because he understood that his character couldn't depend on physical comfort. That if he waited to feel okay to be useful, he'd never be useful. So he practiced productive discomfort every day. And that made him stronger than anyone living in luxury with no challenges. Maybe this will sound familiar. You need to get up early to train. The alarm goes off. It's cold. You're tired. Your body says no. Your mind gives you 1,000 reasons to stay in bed. And you give in. You stay. And in that moment, you feel relief. But later, during the day, something inside you knows you lost. That you betrayed yourself, that you chose what was easy over what was right, and that feeling builds up. Because every time you choose comfort, you lose a little bit of respect for yourself, and every time you choose discomfort, even a small one, you gain it. It's that simple. Your self-esteem doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you do when no one's watching. And you don't need to do anything extreme. You don't need to run a marathon or fast for 3 days. Start with something ridiculously small but consistent. 30-second cold showers. Getting up at the first alarm without negotiating. Training even when you don't feel like it. Telling the truth, even when it's awkward. Working in silence while others rest. Small discomforts that train your character. Because personal growth isn't an event. It's a collection of uncomfortable decisions you make when comfort is tempting you. I remember seeing a mother go out for a run before work. Rain or shine, cold or not, motivated or not. One day I asked her why she did it. She told me something I'll never forget. I do it because I want to grow, and I want to show my kids that comfort holds back growth. It's not about waiting until I feel like it. It's about keeping my word to myself. That woman understands something many don't. Every morning you go out into the rain, you prove to yourself that you can trust you, that you're someone who follows through, and that trust is built in uncomfortable moments, not in easy ones. Her kids don't see her train just for the sake of it. They see her choose growth when it would have been easier to stay. And that lesson is worth more than 1,000 words. Here's something you can apply right now. Pick one thing in your day that's usually comfortable and swap it for something less comfortable. If you usually eat breakfast while scrolling your phone, eat in silence. If you always order food, cook something simple. If you always avoid that conversation, have it today. Not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that you can do hard things, that you don't need everything to be easy in order to function. And when you do that, something shifts inside you. You become more solid, more trustworthy, stronger, not for others, for yourself. Comfort promises you peace, but it steals your strength. It promises rest, but gives you dependence. And the worst part is, it doesn't do it all at once. It does it little by little. One day of comfort, then another, until one day you realize you're scared of everything outside your little safe zone. And that's when life starts to shrink. Because you stop growing, you stop daring, you stop becoming who you could be. The Stoics lived ready for discomfort, not because they liked to suffer, but because they knew the ability to handle discomfort was the foundation of a strong and free life. If you choose one small discomfort today, you'll build a bigger life tomorrow. That's something they understood better than anyone. Now, my friend, think of that one small discomfort you've been avoiding. A phone call, a change, a habit, a decision. The one you know would help you, but you always push to another day. What is it? Tell me in the comments. No judgment here. We're all training the same thing, to grow stronger, not more comfortable. And if you don't want to go into details, just leave this. Today I choose the hard thing that builds me. Sixth teaching, all your disciplines are connected. Have you noticed that when you neglect your body, it's harder to concentrate? Or that when you argue with someone important, your work suffers that day? Or that when your space is a mess, your mind feels cluttered too? You're not strange. It's not a coincidence. The Stoics already knew. Everything is connected. Your body affects your mind. Your mind affects your emotions. Your emotions affect your decisions. Your decisions affect your life. These aren't separate areas, they're all parts of a system. And when one breaks down, you feel it everywhere. When you improve one, you improve everything. Seneca had a phrase that should be burned into everyone's mind. It's absurd to have a clean house and a dirty mind. He didn't say it to criticize. He said it because he saw how people polished their outer appearance while letting their inner world fall apart. And then they wondered why they felt so empty. It's because everything is connected. When you tidy up your space, you're training your mind to organize ideas. When you care for your body, you're strengthening your discipline, which carries over into your work. When you manage your time well, you're learning how to manage your relationships. Nothing is isolated. Everything feeds everything else. You probably know this feeling. It starts with something small. You don't clean your room. Just for today, no big deal. The next day you feel more tired. You don't know why, but something feels heavier. You postpone an important project. You work worse. You sleep worse because you feel guilty. The next morning you wake up even more drained. It's a domino effect. Epictetus said it clearly. What you do in one part of your life, you do in all of it. Because your character doesn't change by category. The way you act is the way you act. And if you allow disorder in one area, you're allowing it in all of them. Think about it. When you train your body, you're not just improving your health. You're training your mind to stick to routines, to follow through when you don't feel like it, to be consistent. And that consistency spills into your work, your relationships, your ability to sustain long-term projects. When you clean your space, you're not just tidying up, you're clearing your head. Every item out of place is a micro-decision waiting to be made. And those micro-decisions add up, draining your mental energy without you realizing it. When you improve your sleep, you don't just rest better. You improve your emotional regulation, your patience, your decision-making. Everything is connected, my friend. It always has been. Marcus Aurelius trained his emotional self-control every single day. Not because he was naturally calm, but because he knew that an emperor without inner mastery was a danger to everyone. One bad decision made in anger could cost lives. So he practiced equanimity like a muscle, and that emotional practice improved his leadership, his ability to listen, his way of ruling. He understood he couldn't separate his inner world from his external one. If his mind was in chaos, his empire would be too. That's the core of Stoicism. To live as a coherent system, where all parts of you work together, not against each other. Now think about the last day you neglected just one thing. Your sleep, your diet, your space, a conversation you avoided. How did that affect the rest of your day? You slept badly, woke up irritated, ate poorly, felt heavy and sluggish, left your space messy, and your thoughts felt scattered. avoided a conversation, and spent the day obsessing over it. Because disorder in one area always demands a price in another, and discipline in one area always brings light to everything else. That's the key most people miss. You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to fix one thing. And let that one improvement ripple outward. You've probably seen this in someone. A chef who started by organizing his kitchen. Just that. But by organizing his kitchen, he improved the way he worked. And by improving how he worked, he cleared his mind. And by clearing his mind, he reorganized his life. It wasn't magic. It was the understanding that everything is connected. Or a teacher who began taking morning walks, not to lose weight, just to clear her mind. But clearing her mind improved her teaching. That improved her patience. That improved her relationships. One thing led to another. Because that's how real growth works. Not in isolated compartments, but in expanding waves. The Stoics saw human beings as integrated systems. Body, mind, emotions, character, decisions, all connected. That's why they didn't separate physical training from mental training. They didn't separate ethics from logic. They didn't separate emotional control from practical action. It was all part of the same mission, to build a coherent life, a life where each part strengthens the others. And when you live that way, life feels lighter. Not because it's easier, but because everything is pulling in the same direction. No parts of you are working against each other. And here's the powerful part. When you understand that everything is connected, you start treating yourself differently. You stop believing you can neglect your body and still have mental clarity. You stop thinking you can live in a mess and be productive at work. You stop pretending you can be disciplined in one area and chaotic in all the others, because you realize it doesn't work like that. What you do in one thing reveals your philosophy in all things. If you're disciplined with your body, you'll be disciplined with your time. If you're honest in your words, you'll be honest in your actions. Everything is connected, everything expands. Try this right after this video. Pick one core discipline and improve it. Just one. It could be exercise. It could be sleep. It could be cleaning your space. Whatever it is, improve it for real. Make it non-negotiable for 2 weeks. And then watch. Watch how that improvement starts to influence everything else, without you even trying. How moving more helps you focus better. How better sleep makes your relationships easier. How organizing your space helps you think more clearly. Don't force it. Just let it happen. Because when one part of the system improves, the others respond. And start doing weekly check-ins. Ask yourself, what area am I neglecting? And how is that affecting the others? Because sometimes you don't see the connection until you stop to look. You think your problem is lack of focus at work, but it's actually poor sleep. You think your problem is low motivation, but it's actually that your space is chaotic, and your mind reflects that chaos. You think your problem is your partner, but it's actually unprocessed emotions caused by not taking care of your body. Everything is connected, and once you start to see it, you can take action where it truly matters. Marcus Aurelius once wrote something that sums this all up. Care for your mind, for from it flows everything else. He didn't write that as a poet. He wrote it as someone who faced the consequences of his decisions daily, because he knew that if his mind was clear, everything else would follow. His decisions, his patience, his justice, his leadership, it all flowed from there. And the same is true for you. When you genuinely take care of one part of yourself, the others begin to respond. Because you're not a bunch of separate pieces, you're a system. And when that system works in harmony, there's no limit to what you can build. When you truly understand that everything in your life is connected, you start treating yourself better. You stop sabotaging one area hoping the others will somehow stay intact. You begin taking care of each part, knowing it affects the whole. One act of discipline today sends a ripple through your future. Improve your sleep. Improve your work. Clean your space. Clear your mind. Be honest with yourself. Improve your relationships. Everything is connected. Everything expands. That's what the Stoics meant by living with wisdom, not in pieces, as one coherent whole. Seventh teaching. Lower your ego and be honest with yourself. Have you ever given a friend the perfect piece of advice and then gone and done the exact opposite yourself? Don't worry. Marcus Aurelius would have raised an eyebrow too, because we all have this incredible ability to clearly see other people's problems while being completely blind to our own. And that's no accident. That's ego. But not the ego that thinks you're better than others. It's the ego that stops you from looking yourself in the eye, the one that helps you justify the unjustifiable, the one that whispers elegant excuses when deep down, you know you're avoiding the truth. And that ego, that quiet self-deception, is the #1 saboteur of your growth. How many times have you lied to yourself and said, "I'm fine," when you knew full well you weren't? How many times have you said, "It's nothing," when inside you were falling apart? How many bad decisions have you justified just because admitting the mistake would make you feel weak? Marcus Aurelius wrote every night for one reason: to avoid lying to himself, to be brutally honest in his journal. Because he understood something you're still learning. The worst kind of lie is the one you tell yourself, because no one sees that one. There are no witnesses, just you. And every time you lie to yourself, you lose a little bit of who you are. Ego is like a camera with a flattering filter. It makes you look better than your actions, or worse than your worth. It distorts reality to shield you from the discomfort of seeing yourself clearly. And that might sound useful, protecting you, but it's really holding you back. Because as long as you can't see yourself clearly, you can't change clearly either. The Stoics worked hard to look at their lives without filters, raw, real, but without self-judgment, not to punish themselves, but to grow from truth, not illusion. Here's the problem. Ego isn't just arrogance. It's avoiding responsibility. It's justifying what you know isn't right. It's pretending something doesn't hurt when it's tearing you apart inside. It's resisting change because admitting it would make you look weak. It's saying, "I don't need help," when you're barely holding on. It's arguing just to avoid saying you were wrong. It's comparing yourself to others, then telling yourself you don't care. All of that, every bit, is ego trying to protect you from truth. And yes, truth hurts. But lies keep you stuck. Seneca said the worst kind of lie is the one we tell ourselves, not to sound philosophical, but because he'd been there. He spent years maintaining an image on the outside, while knowing on the inside he wasn't living in alignment. And one day, he realized living like that was living in a cage, that the only way to be free was to be honest, even if it hurt, even if it meant facing his flaws, because only truth can build something real. Lies only build sandcastles, and the first wave knocks them down. You've probably lived this scene. Someone points out a mistake, something you did wrong, and your first reaction isn't to listen, it's to defend, justify, explain why it wasn't your fault, blame the circumstances. And maybe by the end of the conversation you win, but you lost something else, the chance to grow. Because ego convinced you that admitting a mistake made you weak, when in reality, it's the strongest thing you can do. Epictetus said no one changes until they stop telling themselves stories. And that's exactly what ego does. It tells you stories to keep you from the discomfort of facing yourself. I once heard Tim Ferriss talk about ego in a way that stuck with me for days. He said something like, "Ego is that voice that would rather be right than grow." And he told a simple but brutal story. When he started his podcast, he pretended everything was fine, that he didn't need help, that he could handle it all. He rejected feedback, ignored criticism, said nothing bothered him. But inside, he was falling apart. Pressure, insecurity, fear of failing. And still, he kept up the image of "I'm strong, I'm fine." Until one day, after an episode that went terribly, he finally admitted what he'd been avoiding for years. "I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to learn." That was his breaking point, and also his breakthrough. What mattered wasn't the failure, it was the honesty. Because the moment he stopped performing the perfect version of himself, he gained clarity. And clarity brings peace. direction, real strength, not the kind you fake. That's exactly what the Stoics meant by humility, not tearing yourself down, not minimizing your value, but seeing yourself clearly without decoration and without drama, seeing what you need to work on and working on it, building from truth, not from the mask. Marcus Aurelius used to write phrases like, "You are not a god, you are human." Imagine how hard it is to write that when you're the emperor of the known world, to have absolute power and still remind yourself, you're fragile, you make mistakes, you don't know everything. That's true Stoic humility, to tell the truth even when it hurts, to tell it to yourself first. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, how can you be honest with others? And if you can't see your mistakes, how will you ever correct them? Now be honest, my friend. How many of your decisions come from your true self, and how many come from the image you're trying to protect? How many times have you done something not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to look bad? How many things have you avoided, not because they were impossible, but because putting in the effort might reveal that you're not as good as you thought? That's the ego keeping you on stage. And performing all the time is exhausting, because you never get to just be yourself. And here's what really weighs you down. When you don't ask for help, because your ego says you should be able to do it alone. When you put things off because you're afraid you'll discover you're not as capable as you want to believe. When you stay in a situation that hurts you because admitting you chose wrong is too much. All those decisions, all of them, are driven by fear disguised as pride. And that fear holds you back more than any external obstacle. Because external problems you can face, but the inner ones, the ones you refuse to see, those paralyze you. Epictetus was clear about one thing. If you can't face yourself honestly, you can't grow. Because growth starts with truth, with acknowledging where you're falling short, with admitting what scares you, with accepting that you don't have it all figured out. And that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human and capable of change, because you can only fix what you're willing to admit is broken. So do this while you listen. Acknowledge one mistake without justifying it, just one. You don't have to tell anyone, just admit it to yourself. Think of something you did wrong this week, and instead of making excuses, just say, "I messed up." No explanations, no context, just the truth. And notice what happens, because the moment you drop the ego, even for a second, something strange happens. Freedom, because you don't have to hold up the lie anymore. You don't have to defend the indefensible. You can start from truth. And every night, write down one thing that's hard to admit. It doesn't have to be huge, just something real. I avoided that conversation because I was scared. I didn't work out and I feel disappointed in myself. I compared my life to someone else's today and felt small. Just write it, because writing it is accepting it, and accepting it is the first step to changing it. Seneca used to write every night to face himself honestly, to make sure he didn't end the day without confronting who he really was. Because he knew that honesty, even when it hurts, is the only path to real growth. Practice saying "I don't know" as a humility exercise, because ego hates admitting ignorance. It wants you to look confident at all times, to have all the answers. But the truth is, no one does. And the people who seem the wisest are usually the ones who admit what they don't know the quickest, because they're not trying to prove anything, they're not performing, they're just being, and being is infinitely more freeing than acting. Ego promises protection, but it steals growth. It shields you from the discomfort of seeing your flaws, but it traps you in them. It protects you from the shame of imperfection, but it keeps you from improving. It shields you from vulnerability, but it leaves you alone. Because no one can truly connect with you if all they ever see is the filtered version. Seneca said, "The truth will set you free." He said it because he had to break his own illusions too. He had to face himself without filters and admit he wasn't who he pretended to be. And in that acceptance, he found power. The power to build from truth, not from lies. So, my friend, I want you to do something small but brave. Ask yourself, what truth about me have I been avoiding? It doesn't have to be big. Sometimes the heaviest truths are the little ones we've never dared to say out loud. If you feel like sharing it, I'll read it in the comments. We're all here trying to do the same thing. Grow from honesty, not from masks. And if you'd rather keep it simple, just leave this. Today, I'm going to tell myself the truth. Lesson number 8. From I can't to I will. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up every day feeling capable. Sometimes he'd write things like, I'm tired, I'm irritable, I don't want to get up. And yet, he was clear on one thing. His duty didn't depend on his mood. What he had to do didn't wait for him to feel ready. And that's the difference between those who build their lives on personal responsibility and those who wait to feel motivated. The first group acts even when they don't feel capable. The second waits to feel capable before acting. And while they wait, life passes by. How many times have you said, I can't, when what you really meant was, I don't want to put in the effort, or I'm afraid to fail? Let's be honest. Most of the time you say I can't, it's not true. You can, but you're scared, or lazy, or unsure where to start, or you're afraid that if you try and fail, it'll prove you're not good enough. So you use I can't as a shield, a clever excuse that protects you from the discomfort of trying. Epictetus said the hard part isn't taking action, it's changing the belief that holds you back. Because action is just the final step. But if your mind has already decided you can't, you'll never get there. Your mind is like an inner narrator that's been repeating the same script for years. I can't speak in public. I can't change careers. I can't get up early. I can't stop procrastinating. You've said it so often that now you believe it. But Stoicism didn't ask you to change your life first. It asked you to change the script. Because when you change what you tell yourself, what you do changes. And when what you do changes, who you are changes too. Now think of something you say you can't do. Running, studying, changing careers, having that important conversation, starting that project, whatever it is. And ask yourself honestly, is it true that I can't, or is it true that I'm afraid to try? Because there's a huge difference. I can't is final. It's a sentence. I'm scared is temporary. It's something you can work with. And most of the time when you say, I can't, what's really going on is you're afraid to discover that you can. But it'll take more effort than you expected. Seneca knew the first enemy is the inner narrative. What you tell yourself, you live. If you say you can't, you won't. Not because it's true, but because you won't even try. Your mind already made the decision for you. But if you change that phrase, if instead of I can't you say, it's hard but I'll try today, something opens up, a possibility, a crack in the wall of your limitation, and that crack is enough to start. The process is simple but powerful. First, question the thought. Is it really true that I can't, or do I just believe that? Second, focus on what you can control. You can't control the outcome, but you can control whether you spend 10 minutes today trying. Third, take one small action that contradicts the script. If you say you can't write, write one sentence. If you say you can't run, walk for 5 minutes. That action creates new confidence, and confidence rewrites your identity. Because now you're not someone who can't, you're someone who's trying, and that changes everything. Epictetus didn't change his life by moving mountains. He changed his life by changing his attitude toward what he couldn't control. He couldn't change the fact that he was a slave. He couldn't fix his injured leg. He couldn't control his external circumstances, but he could control how he responded. And in that response, he found freedom. Because freedom isn't having an easy life. It's knowing that no matter what happens, you decide how you act. And that decision, that's what separates living as a victim of your circumstances from living as the architect of your character. You know who Rick Rubin is? Well, you might know him as that mega producer who's worked with half the planet, from rap to rock, from rising artists to living legends. Today we see him as a genius, but nobody sees how it really started. Before all of that, Rick was just a shy student with no connections, no money, and a half-broken tape recorder in his dorm room. And the funniest thing? He used to say that phrase you've repeated 1,000 times. I can't. I can't break into the industry. I can't make music without a studio. I can't compete with the big names. But one day he told himself something else. Not I can't, but I don't know how. But I'm doing it anyway. And he recorded his first project right there in his tiny room. The sound was terrible, full of noise, totally imperfect, but it existed. It was real. It was action. And that one small, almost ridiculous gesture was the beginning of Def Jam, the beginning of everything. Rick didn't break his inner narrative with motivation. He broke it with a clumsy but real first step. That's exactly what happens when you change I can't to I'll do it with what I have. Because, my friend, this is Stoic philosophy in action. It's realizing that I can't is a prison without bars, where the door is wide open but your mind doesn't see it. Because your mind is so used to that script, it doesn't even look for the exit. It just keeps repeating, I can't, I can't, I can't, and as long as you keep repeating it, you stay stuck. But when you change the script, when you say I will, the door becomes visible. And you can walk out. Marcus Aurelius wrote to remind himself that he was capable, even when he didn't feel like it. Because feelings don't define ability. You can feel incapable and still be capable. You can feel tired and still take action. You can feel scared and still move forward. Feelings are temporary. Action is what remains. And every time you act despite how you feel, you prove to your mind that the old script is wrong. That yes, you can. That you always could. You were just afraid to try. Try this before bed tonight. Change I can't to I don't know how yet. Because that phrase gives you back your power. I can't is permanent. I don't know how yet is temporary. It's an invitation to learn, to try, to find a way. And when your mind hears I don't know how yet, it turns on. It starts looking for solutions instead of excuses. It starts building instead of giving up. And each night, write down one sentence that reminds you who you want to become. Not who you are now, who you want to be. Because that sentence becomes your new script. I'm someone who keeps their word. I'm someone who acts even when afraid. I'm someone who doesn't wait to be ready. Write it every night. And little by little, your mind will believe it. And when your mind believes it, your body follows. And when your body follows, your life changes. The journey from I can't to I will is the most stoic journey there is. You don't change the world, you change your mind. And when your mind changes, everything else does too. Because the outside world was always the same. What changes is your ability to respond to it. And that ability, that's built every time you choose to believe you can, even when everything in you says you can't. Every time you act despite fear. Every time you rewrite the script you've repeated for years. That's the moment you stop being a spectator of your life and become its protagonist. Not because it's easy, but because you've decided that your inner narrative can't stay the same any longer. Key number 9. True discipline is what you do when no one is watching. We all have two versions of ourselves, the public one and the I'll eat another slice of pizza even though I said I wouldn't one. The version that shows up when there are witnesses and the one that appears when you're alone. Marcus Aurelius had both too, but he spent years working to make them the same. Because he understood something you're still learning. The real measure of your character isn't what you do when people clap for you. It's what you do when no one is looking, when there's no validation, no recognition, when it's just you and your word. What do you do when no one is watching? That's the most honest answer to who you really are. Because right there, in that moment of solitude, is where your real discipline gets tested. Not on stage, not in front of a camera, not when your friends are watching, but when you're alone in your room, choosing between doing what you said you'd do or giving up because no one will know. Epictetus said that the wise person is their own guardian. They don't need witnesses. They don't need supervision. Because their commitment isn't to others, it's to themselves. Imagine Marcus Aurelius in his tent before dawn, alone, writing so he wouldn't lose himself. No cameras, no soldiers watching, no applause, No one would have known if he skipped that night. No one would have judged him. But he would have known. And for a Stoic, that was enough. Because real discipline doesn't grow from applause. It grows from inner coherence. From keeping your word even when no one is looking. Even when no one finds out. Even when no one congratulates you. That is the discipline that builds character. The other one, the one that needs an audience, is just a performance. And let's be honest, it's easy to be disciplined when there are witnesses. It's easy to train when you go with friends. It's easy to work when there's a deadline. It's easy to be kind when strangers are watching. Because there's social pressure, there are expectations, there are visible consequences if you fail. But when you're alone, when no one will see if you mess up, when you could quit and absolutely no one would know, that's where your true self appears. And most people fail there. Not because they're bad, because they've only trained external discipline, not internal discipline, and those two are not the same. Imagine that on social media you look extremely disciplined. You post gym pics, project progress, your perfect routine. But at home you procrastinate on everything. Your room is messy, your projects half done, your promises to yourself broken. And no one knows, only you. Seneca would say that appearance without practice corrupts the soul. Because living that way means living divided, holding up an image that doesn't match the truth. And that exhausts you. Because you have to maintain two versions of yourself. And when you're alone, you know which one is the real one. What you do when no one sees builds your self-esteem. What you do when people see builds your reputation. The Stoics chose the first one because they knew reputation is fragile. It depends on others. It shifts with opinions. But self-esteem is built through private actions, through decisions only you know about, through moments where you chose to follow through even though no one was watching. And those decisions are the ones that make you trust yourself, because you know your word matters, that when you promise yourself something, you keep it. And no like, no comment, no applause can give you that feeling. Epictetus practiced inner silence when he was a slave. No one saw it, no one knew it. But he trained his mind every single day. He trained himself not to depend on circumstances, to hold his center even when everything was chaos. And he didn't do it to impress anyone. He did it because he knew his inner freedom couldn't depend on external validation. That if he needed witnesses to stay disciplined, then he wasn't free. He was dependent. Seneca spent every night examining his day, without witnesses. Without anyone checking if he did it right or wrong. He'd ask himself, where did I fail today? Where could I have acted better? Was I aligned with my values? And he answered himself with brutal honesty, not to punish himself, to improve. Because he understood that private discipline is the foundation of all real growth, that what you do when no one watches determines who you become when everyone is watching. Now take a moment and think honestly. When were you disciplined without needing someone to praise you? When did you do the right thing even though no one saw it? When did you keep your word to yourself without telling anyone about it? That moment, that silent moment where you chose well without witnesses, matters more than any public achievement, because that's where you really build yourself. In moments no one will ever see, in decisions no one will ever applaud, in the coherence only you will know about. And even if it sounds cliché, silent discipline is an act of self-love. It's how you say to yourself, I can trust you. You don't need supervision. You don't need external pressure. You can follow through just because you gave your word. And that is freedom. Because you stop depending on others to stay on track. You stop needing validation to act. You become your own guardian, your own judge, your own standard. Discipline is like a zipper. When one tooth breaks, the whole zipper comes undone. When you fail in private, you feel it more than when you fail in public. Because in public, you can justify it. You can blame circumstances. You can save face. But when you fail in private, there are no excuses. It's just you and the truth. And that truth weighs heavily. Because you know you could have chosen differently. That no one forced you to fail. It was only your decision. Create a small private ritual only you know about. Something you do every day without telling anyone. It could be writing 3 lines before bed, doing 10 push-ups when you wake up, tidying your space in silence, anything. But make it yours, make it private, something you do simply because you promised yourself, because that ritual, even if small, trains you in the most important skill of all, keeping your word when no one is watching. And commit to one daily action you will never announce. Don't post it online. Don't tell anyone. Just do it. Because when you do something with no desire for recognition, you do it for the right reasons, not for validation, not for applause, but because it matches the person you want to become. And that coherence, that's what makes you solid, what makes you trustworthy, what makes you free. Review each night whether you acted like the person you want to be. Not the person you look like, the person you want to be. And be honest in that review. Because self-deception here is easy. You can tell yourself everything went well, but deep down you know if that's true. You know if you really followed through. And that private honesty is the foundation of everything, because if you can't be honest with yourself when no one sees you, you'll never build anything real. The Stoics knew that true discipline isn't seen, it's felt. It's not in perfect photos or motivational speeches. It's in those silent moments where you choose well even though no one will ever know. And when you become loyal to yourself in private, life starts trusting you in public. Because your actions are coherent, you don't change depending on who's watching. You're the same with cameras and without them. And that integrity, that's what makes you unstoppable. I'm sure we all have a small trick, a ritual, a private gesture that helps us stay strong when no one is watching. Something we do almost in secret, but that holds us up. What's yours? Share it in the comments. Maybe it'll help someone who's trying to build their discipline from zero. And if you don't want to share anything today, just write this: I follow through even when no one sees me. Key number 10. Choose the pain that builds you. There are 2 kinds of pain, the pain of doing burpees and the pain of not fitting into your own pants. Marcus Aurelius would have picked the first one, because he understood something we all know deep down but rarely apply. In life, there's always pain. You can't avoid it. But you can choose what kind of pain. The pain of effort, or the pain of regret. The pain that builds you, or the pain that breaks you. And that simple choice determines the life you're going to live. Because one of those pains passes, the other stays with you forever. What kind of pain are you choosing today without even realizing it? Because every decision you make is a choice of pain. You avoid that difficult conversation? You're choosing the pain of a broken relationship later. You skip studying? You're choosing the pain of missed opportunities. You avoid working out? You're choosing the pain of losing your health down the line. You're not avoiding pain. You're just choosing which one will hurt more and for longer. Epictetus said you don't always choose the pain, but you do choose what it means to you. You choose whether it breaks you or forges you. Seneca wrote entire letters while in physical pain. His body often failed him. He was sick, weak, limited. But even then, he chose the pain of discipline over the pain of giving up. Because he knew the pain of pushing forward builds character. The pain of surrender breeds resentment. One makes you stronger, the other makes you bitter. And he didn't want to reach the end of his life bitter. He wanted to arrive knowing he gave everything he had, even if it hurt, even if it cost him, even if no one saw. Pain is like fire. One kind burns you, the other kind forges you. The Stoics sought the fire that shaped character, not the one that destroyed it. And the difference isn't in how intense it is, it's in where it leads. The pain of effort moves you forward. The pain of regret keeps you stuck in the past. The pain of telling the truth sets you free. The pain of lying traps you. The pain of doing what needs to be done builds you. The pain of avoiding it hollows you out. Same word, opposite outcomes. And let's be clear, nobody wants to suffer. The Stoics weren't masochists. They didn't enjoy pain. But they understood that a certain kind of pain is inevitable if you want to grow. The pain of getting up when you don't feel like it. The pain of doing the right thing even when it's uncomfortable. The pain of finishing what you started. the pain of letting go of what's hurting you. That pain is temporary. It lasts while you do it. But after that, what remains is pride, confidence, strength, something real that you built through effort. But the other pain, the pain of regret, doesn't go away. It builds. Every day you don't do what you know you should, that pain compounds. The guilt of never trying, the anxiety of living outside your values, the constant feeling that you could have been more. And that pain has no end, because you can't fix it by doing something now. You'd have to travel back in time, and you can't. So it lingers. It settles in, and it follows you every day, whispering what you could have been, but weren't. Think about that dream you keep putting off. What hurts more, facing the effort it requires, or living another decade with the feeling that you never even tried? That's the real choice. It's not between pain and no pain, it's between pain that moves you toward your best self, and pain that pulls you away from it. And when you see it that way, the choice is obvious. But most people still choose wrong. Because the pain of effort is in the present, it feels immediate. The pain of regret is in the future, it feels distant, until it's not. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about duty even when it hurt. He had days where he was exhausted, days when his body begged for rest, days when it would have been easier to delegate, postpone, or avoid. But he didn't, because he understood his duty didn't depend on comfort, that if he waited for it not to hurt before acting, he'd never act. So he chose the pain of conscious effort, and that pain, though real, had meaning, because it was building him, not breaking him. I know a surgeon who trains his hands and his precision even when he's tired. His fingers ache, his back hurts. It's hard to stay focused after long shifts, but he doesn't stop. Because he knows the pain of training today is nothing compared to the pain of making a mistake in surgery tomorrow. He chose the pain that makes him better at what he does. And that choice, repeated thousands of times, made him someone people trust with their lives. Not because he's special, because he picked the right pain. A musician who practices scales until their fingers hurt. A student working full-time and still studying for an exam. A mother who trains even though she's exhausted. They all chose the same thing. The pain that builds them over the pain that breaks them. The pain of effort over the pain of what if. And that choice, small each day over time, creates completely different lives. Because the pain you choose today decides the kind of person you'll be tomorrow. And I'm not saying you have to suffer constantly. That's not it. It's about understanding that when something hurts, you have to ask, does this pain bring me closer to who I want to be, or further away? If it brings you closer, go for it. If it pulls you further, get out. Simple. The pain of training brings you closer. The pain of self-destruction pulls you away. The pain of being honest brings you closer. The pain of living a lie pulls you away. The pain of finishing what you start brings you closer. The pain of leaving things half done pulls you away. The question isn't, will it hurt? It's, where is this pain taking me? Seneca once said something that should be engraved in everyone's mind. Present pain is bearable. What makes it heavy is the fear of the future. And he was right. The pain of effort, while you're doing it, is manageable. It's uncomfortable, yes, but you can handle it. What paralyzes you is imagining it'll always feel that way, but it won't. The pain of effort ends. You finish the workout, it's over. You finish the task, it's over. You have the hard conversation, it's over. But the pain of regret doesn't end, because there's no moment where you finish regretting. You just carry that weight forever. Choose one useful discomfort a day. Just one. Something that's hard, but you know builds you. And do it. Not because you enjoy the pain, but because you choose to grow. Because you understand that comfort leaves no mark. Effort does. Comfort keeps you the same. Effort transforms you. And yes, it hurts. But that pain has purpose, it has direction, it has meaning. And when it ends, what remains isn't emptiness. It's something real you built. The Stoics never sought out pain. But they didn't run from the kind of pain that transforms either. They knew that certain kinds of pain are the price of growth, and avoiding it doesn't protect you. It just guarantees a worse pain, the pain of knowing you could have been more, but chose to be less. If you choose today the pain that builds you, tomorrow you'll have a life that doesn't hurt to live, because it will be aligned, because it will be yours, because you built it with real effort, not comfortable illusions that fall apart the moment things get hard. Lesson 11. Discipline is also balance. The problem isn't that you lack discipline, it's that when you set a goal, you want to do everything in 1 week. And Marcus Aurelius would probably be looking at you like, relax, Rome wasn't built in 7 days. Because that's the trap we all fall into. We think discipline means pushing ourselves to the limit, that it means sacrificing everything, that it's about working non-stop until we burn through every last drop of energy. And then we wonder why we can't sustain it, why we collapse, why after 3 intense weeks we end up back at zero. The answer is simple, because we confuse discipline with self-destruction. What if your lack of balance has nothing to do with working too little or too much, but with not knowing when to stop? Because that's the real issue. It's not that you don't try, it's that you try the wrong way. You give everything for 2 weeks, burn out, quit, and fall back into the same cycle. And every time you do it, you lose a little more trust in yourself, because you keep proving to yourself that you can't stick with what you start. But the truth is different. It's not that you can't, it's that you started at a pace no one can maintain. Seneca said that virtue is stability, not intensity, because intensity is impressive, but stability is what transforms. Marcus Aurelius didn't work non-stop. There were days when he closed his manuscripts, took a deep breath and said, "Today, I rest too." Not because he was weak, but because he understood that his mind and body needed to recover in order to keep functioning properly. That if he pushed them until they broke, he wouldn't be able to fulfill his duty. And his duty wasn't to impress anyone with his sacrifice. It was to govern with clarity. And clarity doesn't come from exhaustion. It comes from balance. Your life is like a metronome. If it moves too fast, it doesn't make music. If it's too slow, it doesn't either. The Stoics sought the right tempo, that rhythm you can maintain not just today, not just this week, but for months, years, your whole life, because that's what really matters. Not how intense you can be for a month, but how consistent you can be for a decade. And consistency doesn't come from intensity. It comes from balance, from knowing when to push and when to ease up, when to work and when to recover. And here's what no one tells you. Excess breaks balance too, not just lack of effort. Excessive work disconnects you from your relationships. Overtraining leads to injuries. Being hyperproductive steals your ability to enjoy life. Forcing yourself without rest doesn't make you more consistent. It makes you less. Because the body and mind have limits. And when you ignore them, you don't become stronger. You break. Epictetus said the wise person doesn't overdo anything. Not because of morality, but because they know excess has a cost. What looks like extreme discipline today becomes exhaustion that sidelines you for weeks tomorrow. Think about the past few months. Are you living with discipline or just running on empty? There's a huge difference. Discipline is waking up early and working with focus. Exhaustion is waking up early, working poorly, feeling guilty about resting and crashing by the weekend. Discipline is training 4 times a week with consistency. Exhaustion is training 7 days straight until you get injured. Discipline is moving forward at a sustainable pace. Exhaustion is running like something's chasing you until you collapse. And when you collapse, what happens? You beat yourself up. You tell yourself you're not disciplined, that you're weak, that you should be able to handle more. But no, the problem wasn't a lack of discipline. It was a lack of balance, because discipline without balance turns into punishment. And punishment doesn't build you, it breaks you. But discipline with balance, that becomes a form of self-respect. It's how you say to yourself, I care about you enough to push you, but also to protect you, to give you rest when you need it, to not break you in the process of building you. Seneca reflected on rest as part of duty, not as an exception, but as an essential part of it. because he understood that an exhausted body can't support a clear mind, and a confused mind can't make good decisions. So rest wasn't a luxury, it was a strategy. It was part of discipline, not the opposite. Because resting well helps you work better, and working better helps you make real progress, not in a one-week sprint, but in the marathon of your whole life. Epictetus taught that self-control includes stopping impulses, not just pushing forward. That part of discipline is knowing when to say no, not just to external distractions, but to your own internal drive to overdo it. Because the impulse to work non-stop is still an impulse, and the urge to prove you can handle everything is an urge that can destroy you. Stoic self-control isn't just about moving forward, it's about knowing when to stop before you crash. And that's not weakness, it's wisdom. Learning to stop before you break. Building in real rest days. Listening to your body's signals without dramatizing them, but also without ignoring them. Aligning your goals with natural rhythms, not with unrealistic expectations, because you can push hard for a week or 2 or even 3. But eventually, your body will force you to stop. And when it does, you won't get to choose how or when. You'll just crash, and then you lose weeks recovering, when you could have just rested for a day and kept moving forward. I recently heard Emily Nagoski, expert on stress and co-author of the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, share something that sticks with you for days. She said that during college, she was the typical straight-A student, acing her classes, doing extra projects, working non-stop, never resting. She thought that was discipline, that pushing harder, demanding more, and never letting up was the key. Until one day her body shut down. Total collapse, weeks without being able to work, deep anxiety, exhaustion, and that bitter realization she had crossed a line she didn't even know existed. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a lack of discipline. It was misdirected excess. From that point on, she started treating rest as part of her responsibility, not a luxury. Not to work less, but to work sustainably. And the most surprising part? When she started resting seriously, she got more done than ever. Not because of intensity, because of balance. Do this while listening to this point. Review your week. Do you have real rest days? Or are your rest days just guilt-filled time where you beat yourself up for doing nothing? Because rest with guilt isn't rest. It's just another form of burnout. Real rest is when you stop without guilt. When you understand that stopping is part of the process. That you're not wasting time. You're recovering energy to keep going. And that energy is what makes long-term discipline possible. To the Stoics, discipline meant coherence, not torture. They weren't trying to suffer, they were trying to live well. And living well requires balance, knowing when to work and when to rest, when to push and when to ease up, when to demand and when to care for yourself. Because life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And in a marathon, the winner isn't the one who starts fastest. It's the one who sustains their pace all the way to the end. If you find your rhythm, you'll be able to carry your life without breaking. That's the kind of balance that truly transforms. Lesson 12. Start with a step, not a leap. How many times have you said, "Tomorrow I'll go all in," only to find yourself having breakfast the next day like nothing happened? We've all done it. We've all believed that change has to be dramatic to be real. That if we don't overhaul our entire life at once, it's not even worth trying. Marcus Aurelius would probably laugh with you, because he understood something you're still learning. You don't need to start with a leap. You just need to start, one step, just one. Small, concrete, manageable. Because leaps are scary, steps are freeing. Why are you trying to change your whole life in one leap when you haven't even learned how to walk without fear? That's the trap. You commit to everything at once, you'll train every day, eat perfectly, work 2 hours daily on your project, read a book a week, and on Monday you start with all that energy. Tuesday feels harder, Wednesday you slip up, by Thursday you've quit. Not because you're weak, but because the leap was too big. And when the leap is too big, the fall is too hard. Epictetus taught that progress comes from small acts repeated, not from grand promises that break at the first sign of difficulty. I recently heard James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, share a story that might seem minor, but explains better than any theory why we fail when we try to change everything at once. He talked about a professional he was coaching, a brilliant guy, super talented, who kept saying year after year, "This time I'm getting serious about my personal project." Every January, he'd buy new planners, set up intense schedules, and promise to work 2 hours a day no matter what. And of course, he never lasted more than 5 days. Until one day, James said something that, by his own admission, bruised the man's ego. "Today, your only goal is to work on your project for 2 minutes, just 2, not a second more." The man was offended. 2 minutes? That's pointless. But he did it. 2 minutes. Closing the laptop afterward made him feel a mix of shame and relief. But he'd done it. And the next day, he did it again. And again. And something strange happened. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel guilt or pressure or that overwhelming sense of, "I have to do this perfectly today." He just did 2 minutes. Within weeks, those 2 minutes naturally became 10, 20 full work sessions. No forcing, no burnout, no boom and bust pattern of intense motivation followed by complete abandonment. James Clear summed it up with a line that could have been written by a Stoic. "Small habits don't change your life instantly, but they change your identity. And identity is what drives everything else." And that's exactly what Stoicism teaches. You don't need a perfect leap. You need a step that turns you into the kind of person who moves forward. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations in a single weekend of inspiration. It was word by word. One line every night, one small step each day. He didn't write when he felt inspired. He wrote because it was his practice, his little daily ritual. And that ritual, repeated over years, created one of the most important philosophical works in history. Not because of intensity, because of consistency. Because he understood that real growth makes no noise. It doesn't impress. It accumulates. Your life is like a thick book you want to finish. You won't get there by rereading the table of contents every day. You'll get there by reading one page at a time. The Stoics lived their lives page by page. They didn't chase heroic days. They chased consistent days. Days where they did the minimum required to keep moving forward. Because they knew that the minimum, repeated over years, beats the maximum that only lasts a few weeks. What matters is not how much you do today, but how much you can sustain tomorrow, and the next day, and a year from now. Here's the problem. The pressure of making a big change is paralyzing. When you say, "I'm changing everything this Monday," you're already setting impossible expectations. You're going to read a book a week, train 2 hours a day, be perfect. And that pressure, that unrealistic demand, destroys more than it builds. Because when you inevitably fail at something, you feel like you failed at everything. So you quit. Not because you can't, but because you started by demanding Olympic performance when you were just learning to walk. Seneca said that it's enough to make a little progress today. You don't need more. Just a little, that's enough, because a little repeated daily becomes a lot. And a lot, repeated over years, becomes real transformation. But if you start with too much, you burn out. And when you burn out, you go back to zero. And each time you go back to zero, you lose trust in yourself. Because you keep proving that you can't maintain what you promise. And that loss of trust is what really holds you back. Not a lack of ability, a lack of belief. Now think of something you've been putting off because it feels too big. If you reduced it to a single step, what would that be? Not the whole plan, not total transformation, just the first step. So small you can't fail, so simple you don't need motivation to do it. That's what you need. Not a brilliant plan, a step so tiny you'll take it even when you don't feel like it. And when you do, something shifts. You don't change your whole life, you change the story. You stop being someone who delays. You become someone who starts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do what's in front of you without drama." He didn't try to do it all, just what was in front of him, today in that moment. And that was enough. Because he knew that if you deal with what's in front of you today, tomorrow something else will come. And if you deal with that too, you'll keep moving forward. You don't need to see the whole path, just the next step. And when you take that step, the next one becomes clear. And step by step, you'll go further than you imagined. Epictetus said, "Don't try to control the world, just this moment, because this moment is all you have." You can't control the final outcome. You can't control whether you'll achieve everything you want, but you can control whether you take your small step today. And that step, however tiny it feels, is your only responsibility. Not success, not perfection, just today's step. And when the day is hard, when you're tired, when everything feels heavy, it's okay to make the step even smaller. It doesn't have to be the same size every day. It can shrink, but it should never disappear. Because the day you take no step at all is the day you break the chain. And breaking the chain hurts more than taking a ridiculously small step. So if today you can only do 1 minute, do 1 minute. If you can only write 1 sentence, write 1 sentence. If you can only clean part of your room, clean that part. But do something, because that something keeps the identity of a person who moves forward alive. Do the minimum you can sustain long term, not the maximum you can do once. Break any goal into daily micro-actions, so small they feel silly. Because that simplicity is your advantage. It lets you start without fear, without pressure, without impossible expectations. And when you start without pressure, you stay consistent. And when you're consistent, you build. And when you build, you transform. Someone with anxiety started by reading 5 minutes a day. Just 5. Every day. A year later, they'd read over 20 books. Not because they became a professional reader, because they were consistent with a small step. A musician started by practicing 1 scale a day. Just 1. 5 years later, they were playing professionally. Not because of talent, because of consistency. An entrepreneur started with 1 action a day to test his idea. Just 1. Today he runs a business that gives him freedom. Not because of luck, because of small steps repeated until they became something big. Leaps are scary because you don't know if you can make them. Steps are freeing because you know you can. Leaps require courage you might not have right now. Steps only need a decision, which you can always make. And when you take that small step, you gain something no perfect plan can give you. Evidence. Proof that you can. That you show up. That you move forward. And that evidence, repeated day after day, builds the trust you need to keep going. The Stoics weren't chasing epic days. They were chasing consistent ones. Days where they did what needed to be done, even if it wasn't spectacular, even if no one was watching, even if there were no applause. Because they knew that greatness isn't in the epic moments, it's in the ordinary moments repeated with discipline. If you take 1 small step today, even if it feels insignificant, you're already building the path that will support you tomorrow. You don't need more than that. You just need to start and keep going, step by step, until one day you look back and realize how far you've come without even noticing. Lesson 13. Don't neglect the simple things. You say, "I'll do it later," and that later has more broken promises than a politician on the campaign trail. Marcus Aurelius would probably look at you with that patient, fatherly expression, because he understood something you're still learning. What transforms your life the most isn't the big wins. It's the small actions you repeat every day. Those simple things you ignore because they seem insignificant, but they're not. They're what hold everything together, and when you neglect them, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal, you're neglecting your entire life. How many little things have you put off for tomorrow, even though you know they'd bring you peace today? That dish left in the sink, that conversation you've been avoiding, that unopened email, that messy space, that tiny decision you keep postponing. They seem like nothing, but each one is a small weight that adds up. And when you've got 100 tiny weights on your back, you feel exhausted and don't even know why. Epictetus said that neglecting small things is the fastest way to neglect everything, because the small doesn't stay small. It grows, it multiplies, and eventually it takes over your entire life. Imagine Marcus Aurelius in the morning, arranging his desk, preparing his ink, adjusting his lamp. He didn't have to do it. He had people for that. But he did it anyway, because to him, disorder in the simple things led to disorder in the essential things. If he neglected the small, he'd end up neglecting the big, and he couldn't afford that. He ruled an empire. But you can't afford it either because you rule your own life. And if you neglect the simple things in your life, you end up feeling like everything is out of control. Not because it actually is, but because you let it unravel. Your life is like a rope. It doesn't snap all at once. It wears down thread by thread through small acts of neglect that you ignore. The Stoics reinforced those threads every day. They didn't wait for the rope to break. They took care of the small things before they became big problems, before the manageable turned into the unmanageable. And that's exactly what you need to do. Don't wait for everything to pile up and explode. Tend to each thread every day, because that's easier than repairing the whole rope once it's broken. Seneca explained that the soul becomes restless when life is full of unresolved little things. They don't have to be big, just unfinished conversations, cluttered spaces, decisions you keep delaying, promises to yourself that you don't keep. Each one is like a background app running in your mind. It drains your energy, creates noise, and even if you don't notice it directly, it wears you down. That's why you feel tired even if nothing major has happened, because 100 tiny things are quietly eating away at your mental energy. Maybe this sounds familiar. You let dishes pile up for days. You leave your room a mess. You don't open your emails. You avoid conversations. And one day you wake up and everything feels heavy, but nothing big happened. It just all feels like too much. That's because you neglected the simple things. And when simple things pile up, they become chaos. And chaos is exhausting. It fogs your mind. It holds you back. It traps you in a loop of vague anxiety you can't seem to resolve. And here's what you need to understand. It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're incapable. It's that you've normalized neglecting the simple things. You've made "I'll do it later" your standard response, like that later is actually going to happen. But it doesn't. Later never comes, it just accumulates, and every time you say later, you're choosing weight over lightness, chaos over order, anxiety over peace. And while you might not notice the effects right away, they're shaping your entire life into something heavier than it needs to be. Marcus Aurelius wrote every night because he knew if he skipped a day, he'd skip a week. And if he skipped a week, he'd skip a month. That what starts as a small oversight becomes a massive problem when ignored. So he kept up his practice, not because he was perfect, but because he understood that greatness doesn't come from epic moments. It comes from consistently caring for the ordinary ones, from doing what needs to be done each day, even if it's not exciting, even if no one sees, even if there's no applause. Something happened to me recently that hit harder than I expected. It wasn't big, it wasn't dramatic. It was just one of those dumb little things I always put off. I came home, tossed a t-shirt on the chair, just for a second, dropped my bag on the floor, left a plate in the sink, the usual. I went to work, came back, and that little scene was still there, untouched, frozen in time. And somehow that simple mess felt heavier than it should have. And that's when I realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't the t-shirt or the plate. It was the fact that I'd spent days, maybe weeks, accumulating small things I hadn't closed, emails I avoided, conversations I delayed, tiny decisions I kept pushing to when I had time. And each of those things, added together, had been quietly draining me without me realizing it. And it was almost ridiculous how much peace I got that night. Not from meditating or working or reading, but just from tidying up my space for 10 minutes, just 10. Nothing heroic, nothing worth bragging about. But when I finished, my mind felt clearer, my body more relaxed, my mood more stable. And I finally understood what the Stoics had been saying for centuries, what I'd always ignored. Simple things hold up the big things. Small isn't small. The simple things are what prevent your life from turning into chaos you don't know how to fix. And most of all, taking care of them isn't just a productivity hack. It's an act of self-respect. Epictetus said greatness comes from caring for the moment, not from applause at the end. That what you do when no one is watching, in the moments that seem unimportant, is what defines who you are. And taking care of the simple things is exactly that. It's those moments that seem like they don't matter, but they matter more than any big achievement. Because they're what hold your life together. They're what bring you peace. They're what let you move forward without that constant weight of unfinished business. Think of something small you've been putting off. It's not small. It's a silent reminder that you're not taking care of yourself, that you've normalized neglecting yourself. And every time you see it and don't handle it, you lose a little trust in yourself, because your mind remembers every broken promise, every "I'll do it later" that never happens. And that slowly wears you down, not all at once, but piece by piece, until one day you feel incapable of everything. Not because you are, but because you've piled up so many unresolved things that your mind no longer believes your word. Seneca insisted that what's ignored by habit eventually takes over, because neglect doesn't hurt at first. It starts as a mild discomfort. A plate here, a mess there, a conversation left hanging, and you think it's nothing, you'll deal with it later. But later turns into weeks, and weeks into months, and suddenly it's your way of life, living surrounded by unfinished things. And that weighs you down more than you realize, because every unresolved thing is a decision you haven't made. And decisions you don't make drain you. Create a small ritual to close your day. Something simple. Tidy your space. Write 3 lines. Review your tomorrow. Whatever it is, make it yours. Make it small. Make it sustainable. Because that ritual reminds you that you do care about the simple things, that you do close loops, that you do keep your word to yourself. And that feeling, repeated daily, builds you, gives you stability, brings you peace, not because it's impressive, because it's consistent. And resolve one small pending thing each morning, just one. Maybe it's a message you need to send, a call you've been avoiding, a form you need to sign, a decision you've been postponing. Do it before anything else. Because starting the day by closing a loop gives you power. It shows you that you can act, that you do move forward, and that shifts the energy of your entire day. Don't forget this Stoic rule. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Don't write it down. Don't postpone it. Just do it. Because those 2 minutes now save you the weight of carrying it all day. And when you add up all the small weights you don't resolve, you carry an invisible backpack that drains you constantly. But if you take care of those 2-minute things immediately, you walk lighter. And walking light helps you move faster and with more clarity. My friend, your destiny is shaped in the small things, not in the big moments, in the ordinary ones, the ones that seem unimportant, the ones you ignore because they're not urgent, but they are important. And the important always outweighs the urgent in the long run. If you take care of the simple things today, your life tomorrow will be lighter, more organized, more yours. Not because you did something heroic, but because you took care of each thread, each day. And that's what holds everything together. And if, while listening to this lesson, something inside you started to realign, even just a little, then when the card appears, take a moment and look at it. Not because you should, but because it might be the exact piece you've been missing to keep moving forward. Teaching 14. Change your philosophy and your life will change. You say, when my life changes, then my mindset will change. Marcus Aurelius has probably been laughing at that logic for the past 2,000 years, because it's exactly the opposite. Your life doesn't change when you switch jobs, cities, partners, or circumstances. Your life changes when you change how you think, when you change your internal philosophy. Because philosophy is an abstract theory. It's the operating system of your life. It determines what you see, how you react, what you choose. And if that software stays the same, no matter how much your outer world changes, you'll still feel the same inside. What if your life isn't changing because you're still thinking the same way? That's the core issue. You change your surroundings, your routine, your goals, but you still see the world the same. You interpret things the same, you react the same, and then you wonder why nothing improves, why you keep feeling the same. The answer is simple. You haven't changed. Only the circumstances have. Epictetus taught that nothing changes on the outside if it hasn't first changed on the inside. You can run as far as you like, but if your mind comes with you, so do your problems. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to produce a book. He wrote to change how he thought, because he knew that if his inner philosophy didn't evolve, his empire wouldn't truly change either. He could write laws, win wars, build monuments, but if his mind stayed the same, it would all be surface level, just external noise. So he worked on his mind every night. He questioned his thoughts. He corrected his interpretations. He refined the way he saw the world, because he knew his true power wasn't in his title, it was in his thinking. Your mind is like a pair of glasses. If the lenses are scratched or dirty, the whole world looks distorted. Change the glasses and the world looks different. Not because the world changed, but because you're finally seeing it clearly. That's what Seneca meant when he said, "Clean your thoughts, not your circumstances, because your circumstances are neutral. What makes them good or bad is your interpretation, and your interpretation comes from your philosophy, what you believe about yourself, about life, about what you deserve, about what's possible." Here's the powerful part. Your internal philosophy is your base code. If you believe you can't, you'll act like someone who can't. If you believe life owes you something, you'll live with resentment. If you believe no one values you, you'll chase validation everywhere. If you believe you're not enough, you'll sabotage every opportunity. But if you change that philosophy, if you shift what you believe about yourself and the world, everything else changes. Your actions, your decisions, your emotions, and your life inevitably transforms. Epictetus said we suffer not because of events, but because of our interpretations. Two people can go through the same situation and have completely different experiences, not because the situation is different, but because their philosophy is different. One loses a job and sees failure, the other sees opportunity. Same situation, different philosophy, different result. That's what you need to understand. Your life isn't determined by what happens to you. It's determined by how you interpret what happens to you. And that part? That's on you. I know someone who spent years living with a victim mindset. Everything happened to him. Everything was someone else's fault. And as long as he saw life that way, nothing got better. Because when you're a victim, you have no power. Everything depends on what others do. Until one day he changed his philosophy. He stopped seeing himself as a victim and started seeing himself as responsible. And everything changed. Not overnight, but his responses did. He stopped waiting for someone else to save him. He started saving himself. And that one shift in philosophy changed everything. Now think about this. What belief are you still repeating to yourself that no longer serves you? Maybe it's, "I'm not enough," or "bad things always happen to me," or "I can't trust anyone," or "I'll never make it." Whatever it is, if you changed that belief, who would you become tomorrow? Because that idea, that internal philosophy you've repeated so long without questioning, is guiding your life. It's choosing what you do, what you avoid, what you dare to try, what you don't even consider. And until you change it, your life will stay the same. Seneca observed that when you change your thoughts, your emotions follow. If you think everything is a threat, you'll live in anxiety. If you think nothing matters, you'll live in emptiness. If you think everything is on your shoulders, you'll live exhausted. But if you find a more balanced philosophy, where you take responsibility without punishing yourself, where you see challenges without dramatizing them, where you accept what you can't control without giving up, then you live with peace. And that peace doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from orderly thoughts. Marcus Aurelius faced enormous challenges: war, betrayal, illness, political turmoil. Yet he faced them with calm. Not because he was born that way, but because he saw the world differently. He had a philosophy that allowed him to accept what was inevitable without suffering more than necessary. That allowed him to act with clarity instead of being consumed by emotions. And that philosophy wasn't a gift, it was a discipline. He trained it. He wrote it down. He reminded himself of it every night, because he knew without it, he would fall apart. Sometimes you don't need a new life. You just need a new way of seeing the life you already have. Maybe your life isn't perfect, but maybe it's not as bad as your mind says either. Your mind exaggerates, it dramatizes, it focuses on what's wrong. And if you keep running on that philosophy, you'll suffer no matter how much you change your outer life. But if you shift your perspective, change what you prioritize, what you value, what you interpret as meaningful, your current life can be enough, can be good, can feel like yours again. Write down the beliefs you're tired of carrying. Put them on paper. Look at them. Decide, are these still true, or are they just mental habits? Because most of your beliefs aren't truths, they're habits. And like any habit, they can be changed. Replace one useless thought with one that's more real, more helpful. It doesn't need to be fake positivity, just realism. I can't becomes, I don't know how yet. I always fail becomes I've failed before and learned. No one values me becomes I've been looking for value in the wrong places. Talk to yourself the way Marcus Aurelius did in his journals. Firm, but not cruel. Honest, but not punishing. Remind yourself who you want to be. Remind yourself what's in your control. Remind yourself that your circumstances don't define you. Your response does. And do it daily. Because philosophy isn't something you learn once, it's something you train constantly. You reinforce it, you refine it, you live it. Watch your reactions. They reveal which philosophy you're still following. If you constantly react with anger, your philosophy might be that the world owes you something. If you react with fear, maybe your philosophy is that you can't handle what's coming. If you react with resentment, maybe your philosophy is that others are responsible for your happiness. And as long as those philosophies run in the background, you'll keep getting the same results. But if you change them, if you correct them, train them, your reactions will change. And when your reactions change, your life follows. The Stoics knew that changing your internal view changes your destiny. For them, philosophy wasn't theory. It was a way of living. It was the filter they saw everything through. And that filter determined how they lived, how they felt, how they responded. They didn't expect life to be easy. They expected their philosophy to be strong enough to handle whatever life threw at them. And that's what you need too. Not a life without problems, but a mindset strong enough to meet those problems without breaking. If you change one idea today, your life begins to change tomorrow. Not all at once, but it changes, because you won't be the same. And when you change, everything around you eventually starts changing too. And you know what's interesting? As you've made your way through these teachings, something has been quietly building inside you. It's not a big moment, not a dramatic breakthrough, not a loud realization. It's that quiet sense of, okay, I'm starting to see it now. But there's still something I need to fully put the pieces together. And that's normal. It happens to all of us. Because growth isn't just about doing more, pushing harder, or setting goals. It's about what happens inside your head when no one's watching. And right there is where the final piece begins. The final key: write, read, and act immediately. You say, I'll start tomorrow, and your brain says, perfect. Let's also postpone organizing this pile of thoughts you've got here. Because that's what happens when you don't write, when you don't read with intention, when you don't act immediately. Thoughts pile up, ideas get lost, intentions rot, and you end up living on autopilot, with a mind full of noise that you never filter. The Stoics had 3 tools to avoid that. 3 simple rituals that transformed their mind and their life: writing to see themselves, reading to grow, acting to live. And today, in this final point, I'm going to show you how to use them too. Picture Marcus Aurelius at night after an exhausting day. The generals are asleep, the camp is quiet, and he opens his notebook. He's not writing to be remembered. He's not writing to publish anything. He's writing so he doesn't lose himself. Because he understood something that you still need to learn. Your mind without paper becomes a maze. Thoughts spin endlessly without going anywhere. Emotions get tangled up, and you can't tell them apart. Decisions get confusing because everything's jumbled. But when you write, when you take it out of your head and put it on paper, something magical happens. It gets sorted, it gets clearer, it becomes manageable. Do you really listen to yourself, or do you just think? Because thinking and listening aren't the same. Thinking is letting thoughts run wild. Listening is stopping them, looking at them, writing them down. And that's where the power lies. Marcus Aurelius didn't write pretty phrases. He wrote uncomfortable truths. He wrote to see himself without filters, to spot his own self-deceptions, to understand why he acted the way he did, to make decisions more clearly. And that's what writing does for you. It forces you to be honest. Because when you write, you can't run from yourself. It's right there, in ink, staring you in the face. I know someone who was full of anxiety. Their head was all over the place. They didn't know where to start. They decided to start writing 3 lines a day, just 3, nothing deep. Just how they felt in that moment. And they discovered something. What they thought was chaos was just unfiltered noise. When they wrote it down, they realized most of their worries weren't real. They were just thoughts their mind kept repeating. That's how Seneca worked. He would clarify his emotions by writing them out. Not to solve everything all at once, to see them clearly. Because when you can see something clearly, you can act. When you only feel it without seeing it, it paralyzes you. Our thoughts are like clothes in a room. If you don't take them out, they pile up, start to stink, and take over the space. Writing is airing out the room. It's pulling everything out and letting it breathe. You don't need to write pages. You don't need to be a poet. You just need to get out what's spinning in your head. 3 lines, 5, whatever. But do it. Because every time you write, you're creating distance between you and your thoughts. And that distance is what lets you see them with perspective. Without that distance, you are your thoughts. With it, you observe your thoughts. And that changes everything. But writing alone isn't enough. You also need to read. And not just anything. Read with intention. The Stoics didn't read to pile up information. They read to expand their minds, to find ideas that challenge them. That made them think differently. Seneca said the mind needs nourishment just like the body. And if you feed your body junk, it gets sick. The same happens to your mind. If you feed it empty content, endless scrolling, constant noise, it gets weak. It loses its ability to think deeply. You don't need to read entire books every week. You just need to read something every day. 10 minutes. One idea. Something that makes you think. Something that expands how you see the world. It could be a book, an article, a letter from Seneca, whatever. But it should be nourishing. It should give you something real. Because every idea you consume becomes part of you. And if you only consume shallow ideas, you become shallow. If you consume deep ideas, you become deep. It's that simple. And here comes the most important thing. You can write all you want, you can read all you want, but if you don't act, nothing changes. Epictetus said it clearly. If you don't act in the moment, the idea rots. Because ideas have an expiration date. That moment when you think, I should do this, is the moment to do it. Not tomorrow, not when you're ready. Now. Because if you leave it for later, it disappears. It gets lost in the noise. And in a week, you won't even remember you thought of it. Immediate action is the bridge between thought and reality. It's what separates those who dream from those who build. And we're not talking about big actions. We're talking about the smallest actions. You need to send an important message? Write it now. You've had a task pending for weeks? Do 5 minutes of it now. You want to read more? Read 2 pages now. Because those 2 minutes of action are worth more than 2 hours of perfect planning you never follow through on. Epictetus asked his students to write down lessons to apply them, not to memorize them. to apply them. Because he knew that knowledge without action is just entertainment. It's collecting ideas without transformation. And transformation only happens when you do something with what you know, when you turn theory into practice, when you take that small step that proves, yes, I can do this. I'm doing this. Seneca reviewed his day every night. He wrote what he did well, what he did wrong, what he could improve. And the next day he acted. He didn't wait for total clarity. He acted with what he knew, because he understood that clarity comes after action, not before. If you wait to be totally clear before moving, you'll never move. But if you move without full clarity, clarity appears along the way. Think of something you know would do you good. Right now. Something concrete. Why don't you do it now? Just one step, 1 minute, 1 page, 1 sentence. Because this is the moment. Not when the video ends. Not tomorrow when you're more rested. Now. While you're thinking about it. Because if you do it now, even something small, you're breaking the pattern. You're proving to yourself that yes, you can act in the moment. And that proof, repeated again and again, turns you into someone who doesn't just think, into someone who does. And you don't need fancy tools. A simple notebook, a note on your phone, whatever you have, to download thoughts at the end of the day, to write down ideas when they come, to write out decisions before you make them. Choose a short but nourishing daily reading. Doesn't matter what. What matters is that it's consistent. And don't leave for tomorrow any action you can do in 2 minutes. None. If it pops into your head and you can do it now, do it. Because those 2 minutes are the difference between someone who thinks about changing and someone who is changing. If you write, you understand yourself. If you read, you grow. If you act, you transform. That's the Stoic sequence to change your life from the inside out. These aren't separate tools, they're a system. You write to clear yourself. You read to feed yourself. You act to build yourself. And when all three work together, your life starts to align. Not suddenly. Little by little, but it aligns. Because you're living with intention, not on autopilot. And here's what the Stoics understood better than anyone. Life changes when you change how you live each day. You don't need grand gestures. You don't need epic transformations, you just need honesty with yourself. Wisdom in what you consume, and action in what really matters. Write to see yourself. Read to grow. Act to live. And your life, little by little, will start to align with you. Not with what others expect. Not with what it should be. With you. With who you really are. With who you really want to be. And that's the only thing that matters. Because in the end, the only life you have to live is yours. And the only way to live it well is to do it consciously, with discipline, with constant action, and with personal responsibility. Start today. Write 1 line, read 1 page, act on something, and you'll see how everything starts to change. Sometimes we think changing our life is about a big moment, a revelation, a perfect day where everything clicks. But after going through these teachings, one thing is clear. Your life doesn't change with a leap. It changes with how you talk to yourself, how you act when no one's watching, with the honesty you have with yourself, and with those small steps you choose to repeat, even when they're hard. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. You just have to start today and keep going tomorrow, even if it's just a little. Because when you start building yourself from the inside, with discipline, with clarity, with purpose, your whole life begins to align around that new version of you that you're creating. And that, my friend, is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments which teaching you'd like to apply first in your day-to-day. And if you'd rather keep it simple, write, "Today I start becoming the person I promised myself I would be." They say those who stay until the end always find their reward, and you just did. So I invite you to subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who might need it. Click now on the videos you see on screen, because the journey is just beginning.